Imagine a fighter who arrives like a storm, quiet, polite, almost awkward in interviews, then rips through division after division until the whole sport has to change the way it thinks about wrestling and MMA. That's Khamzat Chimaev's story. The wolf who didn't howl, he hunted. Tonight, we'll trace the lightning-fast rise, the humiliations, the moments the UFC suddenly felt smaller, and the big question nobody wants to stop asking: how far will his dominance go? Stay till the end, because the last chapter is still being written. 2 minutes of footage, one choke, one nationwide meltdown. That's how Chimaev began turning heads, and then those 2 minutes multiplied into a career that left veterans questioning their entire game. By the time he walked out of Chicago with the middleweight belt, the sport had been rearranged. The quiet storm, Khamzat Chimaev, came to the UFC the way some legends do. Quietly, with a skill set so complete and so simple that it looked almost cruelly efficient. Wrestler first, ruthless second. His record: a flawless march that read like a dare. Opponents flattened, rounds shortened. Names that once carried weight reduced to headlines like submitted or suffocated. The UFC stats paint the line: a winning streak and finishes that forced fans and pundits to ask whether anyone could survive his pressure. That efficiency does not just win fights, it humiliates styles. It rewrites matchups. And for fighters who built their careers on striking or creative scramble, Chimaev's approach was a cold lesson in humility. The early run. Look back at the early tape. Dominant takedowns, back control, and a ground and pound that left opponents gasping. It wasn't flashy, it was suffocating. Fighters who leaned on cardio found themselves out-wrestled. Strikers were dragged into positions where their punches mattered less and less. When he beat Kevin Holland by submission, the internet replayed the choke for days, a demonstration of textbook aggression with the patience of a hunter. The first hint that this was different came when Chimaev refused to fight only as a highlight reel. He wanted titles, and he wanted them now. Humiliations and moments. These aren't just knockouts. These are tactical beatings where established fighters looked lost. Kevin Holland, a flashy striker who thought he could trade, then found himself facing a Bravo choke in the first round. The submission was quick, clinical, and left the MMA world buzzing. This man doesn't just beat you, he ends you. Gilbert Burns, a veteran grappler and elite striker. Their fight went the distance, but Chimaev's pressure stole the narrative. Burns was out-wrestled and outworked. When the scorecards read unanimous, it wasn't just a win. It was a message that even an elite grappler could be dominated on the mat. Kamaru Usman, a former champion and the toughest outing yet. Usman brought heart and resilience, but Chimaev's wrestling and pace pushed him to his limits. When Chimaev emerged victorious, the takeaway was brutal. Even an established champion could be unmade against Khamzat's sustained pressure. Each of those wins piled together like bricks in a wall. By the time he faced Robert Whittaker and then Dricus du Plessis, the narrative had shifted. He wasn't just a prospect. He was the standard bearer, the man who humiliated the gatekeepers. The title shot UFC 319 was the night the sport had to accept a new king. Chimaev versus. Du Plessis was billed as a classic, the champion with awkward, unorthodox striking versus the relentless wrestler who'd bulldozed the division. In Chicago, Chimaev did not try to be flashy. He did what he always did: take away space, punish, and maintain control. Judges saw the fight that way too, unanimous scores in favor of Chimaev. By the final bell, the belt changed hands, and the conversation turned from "can he" to "how many belts will he take?" What humiliated really means. People toss around humiliated like it's trash talk. Here it means something tactical and public. When an established style is exposed on the biggest stage, Khamzat didn't humiliate by disrespect. He humiliated by demonstrating superiority in the fundamentals, holding positions, finishing submissions, and making world-class strikers look like amateurs under long-lasting pressure. That's a different kind of humiliation, durable and career-altering. It forced coaches to ask, what do we do against someone who can take my fighter anywhere and control the story for 20 minutes? The UFC adjusts, and the UFC noticed. Rankings shuffled. Title shots were accelerated. Matchmaking started prioritizing wrestlers who could at least neutralize Chimaev's approach. Promos changed tone. Commentators who once celebrated wild striking began praising takedown setups. That may seem small, but in a sport that builds legends around moments, changing scouting, camps, and contracts is seismic. The sport's business side also woke up. Pay-per-view numbers soared every time Chimaev headlined. New merchandise, new partnerships, suddenly the money followed dominance. And yes, big wins bring big sponsorships. The backlash. About the personality, Chimaev's stoic, sometimes blunt interviews rubbed some fighters the wrong way. Social media loved the drama. Opponents claimed disrespect when he refused typical showing-off niceties, gestures that often preceded takedowns or aggressions. There were debates on sportsmanship, on the ethics of playing with an opponent. But in the end, the inside of the cage remained the only real judgment. Fans split. Some saw a villain, others saw a pure competitor who let his actions do the talking. The tactical map. If you're a coach, how do you stop Khamzat? The short answer, you don't. Not completely. You try to take away his wrestling, you condition your fighter for chaos, and you force him into scenarios where strikes, not grips, decide the night. That's why elite fighters in the division started adjusting weight, cross-training in different wrestling, and adding complicated scrambles to their toolkits. Because Chimaev didn't just win, he forced evolutionary pressure on the roster. When Khamzat humiliated other UFC fighters, he humiliated them by taking away everything they trained for: space, tempo, and time. Fighters who relied on striking found their combinations nullified once Chimaev closed distance. Grapplers who depended on submissions found themselves on the wrong end of sustained top pressure. The humiliations were not theatrics. They were textbook dismantlings on the biggest stages. How far will his rise go? The short answer, as far as he wants to push it. After UFC 319, Chimaev openly spoke about ambitions that didn't stop at one belt, talk of a triple crown, plans to test welterweight and light heavyweight options, and a confidence that bordered on inevitability. Whether that happens depends on injuries, matchmaking, and whether the sport produces fighters who can either outstrike him on the feet and scramble on the mat. Realistically, the window for true dominance is small. Champions fall, but Chimaev's mix of youth, technique, and conviction makes him a generational threat. A champion's weaknesses, because there are always weaknesses. No run is unassailable. Chimaev's strengths, relentless wrestling, pace, and positional dominance can be countered by long-range discipline, takedown counters, or cardio tests across 5 rounds. Kamaru Usman was the closest the division had to exposing vulnerabilities. His output tested Chimaev in ways other strikers did not. That's a map for future challengers: mixed timing, level changes, and improbable hearts. But remember, finding the door is different from walking through it. The cultural impact. Chimaev's rise did more than move rankings. It inspired a new generation of wrestlers. Young fighters started posting sacks of takedowns on social media. Gyms adjusted their curricula. Sponsorships followed. For a sport that thrives on storylines, Chimaev gave a spine, the kind of protagonist who demanded chapters. And for the UFC, having a polarizing, unstoppable figure is golden. More PPV buys, more eyes on the product, more debate in gym corners around the world. The critics and the conversations. Critics say the sport will become less entertaining if wrestling suffocates creativity. Supporters point to the technical purity of Chimaev's wins. Both are right. The best MMA finds a balance. It rewards dominance, yet still cherishes flashes of brilliance. Chimaev forced that debate. And when a debate is forced, the art evolves. The future scenarios to watch. Here are the 5 things to watch next. Triple Crown pursuit. Will he chase welterweight or light heavy? A successful drop or jump would rewrite history. The rematch economy. Opponents beaten decisively will demand rematches. Will Chimaev accept them, or will he pick new challenges? Styles that can beat him. Long-range, elite BJJ off the back, or relentless cardio specialists. A combination might overthrow him. Injury and time. Dominance in combat sports is fragile. One injury or a bad camp can halt momentum. Legacy fights. As belts pile up, the narrative shifts from rising star to legacy maker. Who does he choose for those fights? That will define him. Khamzat Chimaev didn't just win fights. He forced a sport to pause and ask how it would respond to a wrestler who could dominate the highest level. He humiliated warriors not by trash talk, but by showing up with a skill set sharper than anyone had expected. The UFC landscape changed because he demanded it. Rankings, training regimens, and even matchmaking philosophies shifted. So, will Khamzat's rise continue? The smart answer is cautious optimism. The man is young, hungry, and technically elite. The sport has already bowed in places. Whether it crowns him the most dominant champion of a generation depends on variables outside of pure skill: injuries, matchmaking, and the inevitable pool of competitors. If you felt the impact of this journey, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Who can stop Khamzat? Or will he be the man who reshaped the sport forever? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.